Welcome to the Bodhi Academy. My name is Shrutika and today let us continue with our chapter. So today let us continue with our chapter Motion and Time from Standard 7th, chapter 9, and this is our part 3. So in our previous parts, that is part 1 and part 2, we have covered the types of motion. We have seen the concept of motion. Then we have seen different examples of different types of motion. Then we have seen concept of speed and we have seen the formula to calculate speed. Then we have seen the concept of time, then units of time, and how speed is measured using speedometer and odometer. So till here we have covered in our first two parts. So today let us see how to represent distance time graph or how to represent motion using graphical method in our part 3. Okay, so today we will see the graphical representation of motion. So first let us see what is the meaning of distance time graph. So motion or the motion or the distance time can be represented using a graphical method. So here let us see which are the types of graphs. First type of graph is a bar graph. So here we can see this is a bar graph. It consists of a y-axis which represents the total runs scored by the athlete and the x-axis. So this is the y-axis of the graph and this is the x-axis. So x-axis represents the number of overs in a match and y-axis represent the number of runs scored by the player in those overs. So how to read this bar graph now? So bar graph is basically used to represent the data of the players. So here we can see that the first bar represents the first over, that is the first over, as we know that x-axis represents the number of overs. So in first over, what we can say that in the first over, the number of runs scored by the player is 1 because here you can see that the bar is ending at 1. So this is the first, these are the number of runs scored by the player. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So total number is 10. So maximum number of runs scored by the player is 10 runs in 6 overs. So here then second over. So we can say that in the second over, the number of runs scored by the player is 5 runs because the graph, this bar ends at 5 runs and it is at the second over. So then in the third over we can say that the number of runs scored by the player is 3 as it is touching the third run. Then we can see that at the fourth over the player had scored some runs between 10 and 9 here. Between 10 and 9. See, the bar is touching a position between 10 and 9. So it can be like 9.5 or yeah, something like 9.5. So between 9 to 10. So this is the number of runs scored by the player in the fourth over. Then we can see that at the fifth over, the run scored is 2. And at the sixth over, the number of runs scored by the player is somewhere between 5 and 6. So it can be like 5.5 between something between like 5.5, as in it should be like between 6 to 5, because the graph is, it is ending between 5 and 6. So it can be like 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. A maximum it can be 5.5. This is how we can read or represent data using a bar graph, and this is how we read the or this is how we explain the data which is represented in a bar graph using this bars. So in a bar graph, there is y-axis, there is x-axis which represents the data, and the data is represented in forms of bars. So this is the first way of representing any data using graphical representation. Then the second type of graph is a line graph. Figure 13.10. So figure 13.10 represents the line graph showing changes in weight of a man with age. So here again it is y-axis which represents what? The number of weight. So the y-axis is representing the weight in kgs, and x-axis is representing the age of the men in years. So this graph is giving us a data of the man's weight which is increasing with the age. Okay, so when he was 2, his weight was 10 kg. Was 10 kg. When he was 4, it was again 10 kg. Then when he was 6 years old, the weight was somewhere between 10 to 20, 10 to 20. That it can be like 11 kgs, 12 kgs, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So from 10 to 20. So if we see that it is near 10, so it could be like 12 kgs or 13 kgs. So like that, like this. Again, then at the age of 8, his weight was 20 kg. Yes. Then again, at the age of 10, the weight was between 20 to 30. So it is near, it is coming over here near 20. So it could be like 22 kgs. So like this, with his age, his weight kept on increasing. And when at the age of 22, his weight was maximum. That is 70 kgs. At the age of 22. So this is how we can, this is how we have to read, or we have to analyze how the data is given using a line graph. So why is it called a line graph? Because various points are joined and it is forming a line which is in a increasing order. See, from lower this thing, from lower age, he is going to a higher age, and his weight is also increasing with the age. So this information we can get from the line graph. So this is another method how we can represent data using a line graph. So now we will see how we can represent motion of a car using a, we'll see how we can represent a motion using a distance time graph. So motion is basically measured in distance and time. So how we can represent a data which is given using a distance time graph. for a graph. So how are we going to draw a distance time graph? So to draw any graph, what we need is the axis first. That is y-axis and x-axis. So this is our y-axis and then this is our x-axis. Then we have to see which axis will represent what. That is, our x-axis will represent our time and y-axis will represent the distance covered in that time. So if then so this is the first step wherein we have to draw the axis. Then we have to name the axis as in which axis will represent what. That is y-axis will represent time and x-axis will represent the distance covered by the object in that particular time. And here it is the origin of the axis, that is O, or we write it as 0. Then we have to see the units or the readings which are given, which we have to represent using the distance time graph. So here, see. So car is traveling in 1 minute 1 kilometer. In 2 minutes it is covering 2 kilometers. So this is how we will have to also write it in the graph. That is called the units. The values we have to write of time. So it is starting from 1. So this will be your first 1, then again 2, then the 3, 4, 5 and 6. Again here it is covering the distance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. The distance between this, each number has to be constant, as in if you have to, 1 unit will be like 1 centimeter. So this we have to keep constant for both the axes. Okay. And then time, the unit of time over here it is given as minutes and here it is given as kilometers. So this is also very important when we represent any data using distance time graph. So now first, in the first table, what we can see is the person is traveling in 1 minute, he is covering 1 kilometer. So how we will represent this using a distance time graph? So over here we have to find that 1 minute. In 1 minute, the person is traveling what 1 kilometer. So the point will come over here. Again, similarly, this in the second thing it is 2 kilometers. In 2 minutes, he is covering 2 kilometers. So then we have to see where 2 kilometers and the 2 minutes intersect. So the point of intersection between the distance and the time we have to mark it over here. So similarly, in 3 kilometers, he is covering 3 minutes, he is covering 3 kilometers. Again, in 4 minutes, he is covering 4 kilometers. In 5 minutes, he is covering 5 kilometers. So what we will get is a graph which is representing the data which is given in the from the data, that is the time and the distance. So this person was moving in a constant speed. So this is how we can represent this is how we will represent the data of a car, wherein it is given the time taken for the car to travel the particular distance, and this will be represented using a distance time graph like this. So thank you for watching today's video. In today's video, we have seen how data can be represented graphically using distance time graph. Yes, so how it is represented using a distance time graph. Um, Thank you once again, and please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe.